Hey guys, welcome back for another video. This is going to be short and sweet. I'm going to be taking you through my opinion of what the best settings are for the LG C2 series OLEDs. And the only reason I'm making this is because everything else out there that I've seen, all the videos, all the walkthroughs, all the online communities, the articles, etc., have been made sometimes over a year ago, and something has changed. I updated this as soon as I got it out of the box, so I never ran any previous firmware, but something has changed, either firmware or maybe the panels themselves, and mine is behaving like a hybrid between the C2 and C3. After trying all the different suggestions, I found for C2, it wasn't until I realized this and applied some settings that were suggested for the C3 series that it finally looked correct. So if you're new to my channel, I am not a professional reviewer or calibrator or rating site or anything like that. I'm just a guy who loves tech. The other important thing is there is no settings you're going to find in here for gaming. I simply don't game on this in the living room, so I haven't even touched gaming mode. I never will. If you're looking for those settings, unfortunately, I can't help you, but there are plenty of other guides out there that I'm sure are great. One other brand new thing of note before I start: if you've got this set and you were planning on going into the service menu and possibly voiding your warranty to disable the auto dimming feature, the ABSL, I did reach out to LG last week and got a written response that there is a new firmware coming where they're going to apply the fix that they just did to the C3 series to fix that, so you will no longer need to go into the service menu. That being said, if you want to, here's a couple easy ways. If you're using a Harmony Hub-based remote, all you have to do is open the app, go to your devices, click on the TV, and you'll see the button in Start. That opens up the service menu. Or if you don't have a Harmony Hub-based system, you can just order this $6 and change remote off of Amazon. I'll put the link down below. Okay, let's get into the settings. First thing are just some simple changes to the set itself. If you click the mute button on your LG remote a few times, you get this button here. These three options down at the bottom are on by default. This is CEC. If you're using CEC, you're plugging things into the TV, you want it to come on and off automatically and control other devices, etc., leave that on. If you're using a Harmony system like me, turn it off. The Show LG logo when turning off, I like the TV just to go black when it powers off. If you leave it on, you get this big bright white LG logo for a second or two. I just don't want that on. No signal image. This is only important if you're switching inputs. I have different inputs going into my processor, and when things switch, like say between the Shield, the Apple TV, for example, or the computer, then it displays some different bright images in that second or two between the inputs changing. If you don't want that, just turn that off. Now on the remote itself, we've got 4 buttons around the D-pad. We got home in the upper left, inputs in the upper right, settings in the lower right, and back in the lower left. If we long press the inputs, we'll be taken to our home dashboard. This is kind of like a basic visual Alexa, you can think of it. I'm not going to tie anything into this, but if you're setting up over-the-air TV or your connected devices, this is your visual dashboard if you would like to use it. I'm only using it to control the name of my inputs. If we go up here, we can edit the inputs, and then you can rename and change the icon. Now, if you single press the settings button, it brings up your traditional menu here with all the different sections that you can go to. Or if we click back, if you long press on settings, it'll take you right into the all settings, so you get everything in one shot. Just a quick little shortcut there to save you a couple clicks. All right, now we're gonna run through this. First of all, there are, if you're, like I said, not gaming, there are going to be 3 different video run-throughs that we have to go through. One for SDR, one for HDR, and then one for Dolby Vision. This is, of course, assuming that whatever source you're using can do all 3 of those. In order to do them, you have to do them one at a time. Doesn't matter which order, but you need to be playing whatever appropriate source. So for example, we need to be showing an SDR source, wherever it's coming from. That will get us into our SDR settings. We need to be playing an HDR source to get into the HDR settings, and we need to be playing a Dolby Vision source to do the Dolby Vision settings. So you can't do them unless they're actually being played while you go into the menu. So we're going to start here with SDR. This is just a screensaver off of my Shield, and we can go up in here. Come on, remote. I don't like that it shuts off like that. There we go. So you just have to roll the little nub and get it going. So let's go into picture. And I'm not going to explain everything. What I'm going to do is just show you, and you can get the exact same results that I have, assuming you're on the same firmware. Put it on ISF Expert Dark Space. I should note that my room is light controlled. I have no direct sunlight. There is a lot of indirect light during the day, but I can completely darken the room. And at night, of course, it's completely dark, and I have nothing reflecting behind me in the TV. So it is a light controlled room, and these settings are absolutely perfect. If you are in a bright room, there is certainly going to be some settings you're going to have to tweak to personal preference. Next, go to advanced. And this sequence is going to be the same for SDR, HDR, and Dolby Vision. Brightness, this is certainly a personal preference, and one that changes immensely between all the different opinions out there. And like I said, something has changed. For example, ratings.com wants this at 24. It simply is unwatchable at 24. Something changed. Now, I saw guides and videos and everything everywhere. Most of them started about 30, but all the way up to 80. I found 75 to just be the correct brightness. It's not overly bright. I see all the detail in dark scenes and nothing looks wrong. It just looks absolutely perfect in these lighting conditions with this firmware, with this panel at 75. So 75 brightness, default 85 contrast, default black level 50, dynamic contrast default off, peak brightness default off, gamma BT 1886, auto video range, motion eye care off. In color, everything default. I have nothing loaded under the fine tuning calibration. It looks fantastic right out of the box. Under white balance, this is, again, something I found in C3 settings that completely changed the game when it came to black crush. Nothing I did until I did this fixed some very low-level black crush for the C2. So change method to 22 points, and then under signal level, set it all the way down to 2.5. Absolutely fixed it. That's all it took, but no C2 settings, video or article had that. It was under C3. Default brightness level at selected, I think that was the default 5, but if not, put yours at 5. I don't remember if that was default or not. And everything else default. Clarity, this is certainly personal preference. I came from a Sony just before this. I had an 85 Sony 900H and absolutely loved the motion. It was just right. There was nothing that caught my eye as being off. And thankfully, I am just as impressed with this. So what I have on is smooth gradation on low, everything else at off. Now I am running this off an NVIDIA Shield and an Apple TV 4K. You of course have to have your source appropriately set up. And the signal coming from both of those at their appropriate 4K settings gives me these results. They're perfect. For true motion, cinematic movement does it for me. It just cleans up the little bit of judder at 24 FPS, and everything else is just as good as the Sony. I have no issues with it whatsoever, so that's all it took. Of course, that's personal preference. You can set it smoother or completely off if you wish. If you're using multiple inputs, your HDMI 1 through 4, you can click this when you're done and it will apply it to all. Otherwise, it doesn't make any difference. I'm only using one input, so it doesn't do anything at all. Filmmaker mode and reduced blue light are by default off. Keep those off. For sound, there's not too much here. However, if you do not use CEC, and if you definitely don't want any sound coming out of your TV speakers, for example, I use a full home theater system. I don't want the speakers to ever activate. There unfortunately is no option to disable the internal speakers. Sony had that option, and that was specifically for using external home theater stuff. But you can't do that there. So I tried just use TV speakers and turn the volume all the way down. However, there are some things that turned it back on. For example, going into that mute menu, if you press the mute button here, you can see that come up. It's trying to turn the speakers back on. So what I did is I chose used wired speaker optical out device, and that will guarantee that you absolutely never get sound out of your TV speakers. If you choose HDMI ARC, it will re-enable CEC, so you definitely don't want to use that. And all the other options, this use wireless speaker requires you to connect to a Bluetooth speaker, and use external speakers with TV speakers obviously keeps the TV speakers on and it comes back on again. So the disable speaker option is use wired speaker, optical out. And of course, when you do that, everything is grayed out under advanced settings, and that's exactly what you want. Under general, always ready, disabled, AI service, everything off. OLED care picture settings off, device self-care, energy savings off. OLED panel care, screen move off, adjust logo brightness off. I do not use this with anything that would have any kind of burn-in. I don't game, I don't watch TV. As far as networks, I don't have any logos, I don't have any news bars. I always use screensavers. There's no way for this to ever get burn-in. There is never a static image or anything on here other than a source that would be not moving for more than a couple minutes in its lifetime. If you have other situations, you may want to keep these on. Under accessibility, I want to say a couple of these were on by default, like the TV power sound. I have that off. That's obviously, it makes a ding and a little chime when the TV comes, I believe it was on or off, and I turned that off. So I like it, like I said, black when it goes off, and obviously no sound. Under support, software update, I turn off auto update. Now I have no personal reason to think LG would push out a broken firmware, but I have learned from other brands like Sony that sometimes they will push out a firmware that may fix one thing but break another, and I just want control over that. I want to wait a few weeks, wait for some guinea pigs to apply a new firmware, and then we'll see how it goes. Now this is the version that I'm on, and this is what I've been on since I got the TV, 3.33.16. If you're prior to that, these settings may not apply. All right, let's do HDR next. Like I said, you just have to be playing something in HDR, and all of a sudden we're in our HDR settings. Back into picture, cinema mode, advanced, brightness at default, contrast default, black level default, 100, 150, auto dynamic off, dynamic tone mapping on, peak brightness high, gamma the default 2.2, auto video range, motion eye care off, color default 50, depth, auto gamut, fine tune, off, white balance, warm 50 default, everything else default. Not too much to do with HDR or Dolby Vision. Same motion settings for all three as well. Cinematic movement, it's just what I like. For Dolby Vision, cinema mode. Cinema home is just a little bit brighter. I do find it raises things a little too bright. Cinema was perfect for me. Under advanced, it's gonna look real familiar. Default everything here, peak brightness high. Default here. No calibration. White balance, everything default. Smooth gradation low again. And cinematic movement. And that is it. All right, so that's it. That's my perfect suggestions for settings for watching content. Hope it helps. If you're like me and you scored a C2 on an awesome closeout sale, because the C3s are out and they are almost identical, you'll enjoy your set more with these settings. See you next time.